Hoy platicamos con Bonnie Garmus, autora de Lessons in Chemistry. Esta es la primera novela de Bonnie y fue un éxito traducido a 35 idiomas. Su protagonista es totalmente producto de su imaginación. La única referencia real es el deporte de remo que ella misma practica. Actualmente se está adaptando una serie de televisión protagonizada por Brie Larson. Hola, somos Cristi Mesta y Fabiola Ramírez en un programa especial de En la misma página, en donde platicaremos a fondo con autores, editores y maestros.
Quédense con nosotros para escuchar y conocer a estas personas que nos comparten parte de sus vidas y experiencias.
¡Que lo disfruten! Hi, Bonnie. Hi, we are with Bonnie Garmus, author of Lessons in Chemistry. If you follow us, you already have listened to the podcast, and now we're here with the author. So welcome and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm excited to do this.
You're in London right now, right?
Yeah.
Do you live in London?
Yes.
You live since when?
We've been here almost 6 years now.
Oh, wow, that's a long time.
Yeah, it's a long time.
Well, first of all, let me tell you that we loved your book. It's a great book. I think it has a lot of depth, but it's so easy to read. It's funny. I laughed a lot, and I connected with Elizabeth very, very much.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that.
Congratulations, we loved it. And
Thank
here
you.
in Mexico, people have loved it. We've come across a lot of people who like it and who like to talk about it and to discuss it, because it has a lot of great points, especially for us women.
Yeah.
Right?
I think it was very clever how you could manage talking and writing about certain topics that are very important and issues, social issues, political issues, and it was done in a way that we could laugh, because you gave it a sense of humor that really connected to us readers, that we laugh out loud. So I thought it was very clever. Tell me about how do you manage, you did this so well.
Thank you. Well, that's really kind feedback. When I was writing the book, I knew that the topics I was going to be, discussing were pretty heavy topics. They're not nice. They're dark things in life. And in order not to seem preachy, and in order to make people keep reading and gain appreciation for the people going through this, I knew I had to interject humor. Otherwise, it would just be too dark.
Of course, yes. And your book has a lot of chemistry issues and topics, and it's a chemistry lesson. Are you a chemist?
No. I'm not even a scientist. I'm not even a cook. So I had to do a lot of research in order to write the book. And it turned out to be, the chemistry is more difficult than I thought. And the cooking was even more difficult, because I just don't even enjoy cooking. It's sort of ridiculous that I combine those two topics. But, I gained a really big appreciation for chemistry and for people who cook well writing this book.
When we did recorded the podcast, we categorized this book as historical fiction, because even though Elizabeth didn't exist, a lot of women like her existed in order for us to have the right to vote or the right to work or whatever. So did you inspire in someone special, or just came up with Elizabeth in your imagination?
I came up with her in my imagination. To be honest, I was writing my very own role model, because I'd encountered a lot of sexism at work, and I was still encountering it, I just thought, how much longer are we going to keep going through this cycle? And I think some of the sexism is unconscious on the part of some people. But I think what I was trying to do was bring it to light put it in a different era so that people would notice that we're still fighting the same issues.
Yes, we talked about it. It's the same issues we can go over and over again. As women, it's really hard to break that pattern.
Yep.
It's really hard. And more than a cooking class or a cooking show or a chemistry lesson, your book or the things that Elizabeth Salt gave us was a personal empowerment. Like, she really tried to give us the power as women to stand up for our beliefs or our rights. And she did it in a way that there was no consequences for her. Like, she said it without thinking it would be hurtful for someone else. It was the way she saw the life.
Exactly. You know, Elizabeth Zott is a rationalist. So she doesn't ascribe to theories about what women should be, because those theories are based in culture and society, and they're really based in myth. And so she just decided that doesn't apply to me because it literally does not apply to any of us.
Exactly. I think that in most of the book, we can see the feminist part, right, of the book, like all the troubles we went and we talked about and everything. But there's a character in the book that I felt that he was a feminist. Well, maybe there was two characters, but mostly the producer. I think that when he is left alone with his little daughter, he has to also live a life as a woman. Like, he has to, in that age, in that period of time, it was really difficult for men to know about the school activities. Maybe right now it's the lunch. Maybe right now it's as well as difficult, but in those ages, I think it was more difficult to realize that a man can also do woman stuff.
I think you're absolutely right. And I'm so glad that you noticed that, because Walter Pine is one of my most favorite characters. And what I really appreciated about him and writing him was that not only was he a single father and he had to do everything, but that he would be suspect because he was a single father, and he has employed Elizabeth Zott, and she's more or less making his life miserable by not following any of his instructions. And yet he allows her to continue her show because he respects her, because he knows deep down, he believes in what she's saying. And he knows that even deep down, she's probably going to ruin his life. And, you know, he's going to lose his job, but he lets her do it anyway. And so he was really one of my most favorite people to write.
He's awesome. I like him a lot.
I also like 630 a lot. So tell us a little about 630.
It's the best character. Yeah.
I love 630 too. I'm very fun. Well, 630 is actually based on my old dog. 630 is the only character in the book based on a live being, except this dog is no longer with us. But we had a dog named Friday, and she was really, really smart. And we'd gotten her from a shelter. She'd been very badly abused. She was very thin and had mange, and someone had burned cigarettes out on her back. It was just horrible. But she turned out to be this incredible dog. She knew a lot of words, and she would demonstrate this all the time because she would watch us while we talked. And so whoever was talking, you know, she'd shift and look at them like this. And we realized after a while that she was reading our, she was understanding, and she would go get things that we were talking about. And then we were transferred abroad, actually to Switzerland, and Friday learned German. So, you know, dogs are really amazing. And there have been a lot of famous dogs. I can think of one in particular named Casper, who lived with a clinical psychologist, and he taught his dog over 1,000 words.
Wow. So it's mostly close to 630.
Yeah. I think Casper was even a little bit higher than 630, but yeah, it's a really fascinating story about Casper.
And when did you decide to give 630 a voice?
You know what? It just started happening. At first I thought, oh, I better not do this. And then the more I heard 630 commenting on us humans and what he thought of us and our decisions and our mistakes, I thought it would be good to have the point of view from the other side of the animal kingdom, an animal commenting on us, because in fact, animals think all the time, and they make decisions all the time. And certainly anyone who's had a dog knows that so often your dog already knows what you're thinking. They can smell you, and they can sense it from what your body is expelling in terms of hormones and other chemical sense. They know how you feel, literally know how you feel. And so they think. And so when I started writing him, I thought, I think this is okay, because of course they think.
I love that he called Madeline the creature.
I
love it. The creature. I don't know what it is.
The creature.
I love that.
Oh, good.
We've interviewed a lot of authors, and they all coincide in that when you're writing, that the character just develop by themselves. You just have to listen to them or just let them be. So that's what happened with 630 when you wrote him or wrote about him.
Yeah, because while I based 630 on our dog Friday, I really had no idea, what Friday would have thought of different situations. But when 630 started observing humans under stress and humans in conflict, I just let him tell me what he saw and how foolish we must have seemed to him. I don't know if dogs understand lying, but 630 picked up that people lie a lot. and that must have been really confusing to him.
But also we saw throughout the book, this is another topic that it's really, really hard for women, that they suffer a lot of sexual abuse in the work, like her boss making sexual tension and comments, and also when she was a student. But there's also a big issue of abuse for her friend. Well, it was now her friend, but Harriet.
Right.
She experienced this kind of abuse, and you portrayed all kinds of abuses women can get in different areas. Mm-hmm. That was a really hard topic to read. Was it to write as well?
It was really hard to write it. I think what's really surprising to me, a lot of men think that because we had the Me Too movement, that sexual abuse has somehow been solved, and that there aren't these situations. But in fact, it's increasing, which I didn't realize. And in the United States, 1 out of 6 women will be sexually assaulted in their lifetime. In the UK, it's 1 in 5 women. It's very common, and about 75% of the time, the woman knows her attacker. But it's really sad to think that this still goes on, and that people think, well, we've already discussed that, so it must not be happening anymore, when in fact it's become very prevalent. So I had Harriet with her husband, who was, abusive in a lot of ways, because that's what happens for a lot of women. And it was hard to write about, thinking about Harriet in that situation, and Elizabeth in her situations. But I think it's something that people need to be reminded. This is actually still the same for a lot of women.
Yeah, of course. Talking about the sexual harassment, remember when Elizabeth, she had the pencil in her head, and she defended herself with the pencil and stabbed it to the it was a professor, I think.
A professor, yeah.
Yes. We saw that as a symbolism of defending yourself with writing, with words. Have you ever thought about it, or someone have come with this idea?
I love that. I wanted to use a pencil because Elizabeth says that scientists know they make a lot of mistakes, so they write things in pencil because they need to erase and rewrite. And one of my ideas there, although I love this idea that, she's using her words as a weapon too, and the words are symbolized by a pencil. I was also thinking really about how these terrible things happen to people in life, and a lot of times you'll find people cannot get past something that's been difficult for them. And what Elizabeth Zott is advocating is that you erase it. It doesn't mean it goes away. You can still see the outline of what you've written, but it's no longer ruling your life. And so for her, that pencil is a symbol of internal strength. If she is approached again in a negative way, she knows what to do, but she is also reminded of her power when she touches her pencil.
Exactly. And when you were writing Elizabeth Zott, we just saw the trailer for the upcoming series, and I'm really excited. I'm really excited. But when you were writing Elizabeth Zott with her eyeglasses and her pencil, number 2 pencil and everything, were you thinking in about someone specific for her to be the actor who we're going to be portraying in a series?
You know what? I never ever thought my book would get published. I never got to that point where I thought, oh, I'd have to, think about who would play these characters. I never envisioned anyone. And it's only on the American cover, they put glasses on her, which she doesn't have in the, and in other cultures too, they do all these things. And it's so interesting. But what happened with the series is that before I even had given my manuscript over to both Britain and the US publishers, Hollywood had signed it as a series, and Brie Larson called me and told me that she wanted to be Elizabeth Zott and she wanted to be the executive producer. I just couldn't believe it. So before the book was even published, before I even thought about, well, who would play these characters, people were just falling in place saying, I want to be this character and I want to be this character, which was, Brie Larson has an Academy Award, and I can see why. I watched part of the series because it's all done. It's almost all done. And she is really formidable. She does a really good job playing Elizabeth Zott. So I feel like I'm really lucky, but Hollywood finally did say to me, who do you see playing some of these roles? And so I sat one weekend and I thought about all the people I could see, and I sent them my list and they didn't use any of them.
It's gonna be great.
They know better, right?
I know, they know better. They know better. So, yeah.
So tell us about you as an author. Are you working on something else? Are you planning a part 2, or Elizabeth thought it's done, or what are you working on?
Well, I'm not doing another Elizabeth Zott story. I am working on something completely different. And I haven't had as much time to work on it because of the ongoing promotion for lessons in chemistry. But I do like this other book. And a lot of people have asked me about writing a sequel, but right now I've said I'm not going to, because I come from a copywriting background. And in copywriting, you always leave your reader wanting more. Because if you give them too much, they go away. So that was sort of my training. So my feeling is I'm not going to do a sequel, but then so many people have requested it. And I have a lot of ideas. I could do one, but it's not going to be right away.
Okay. And you've been around books all your life.
Yep.
So it was really easy for you to become an author, or you took a lot of time to deciding to do this?
Oh, well, I've been trying to be an author for a while, but I faced a lot of rejection like most authors do. And my job, during the day was writing, because I was a copywriter for an ad agencies. And I just found if you write all day, you don't feel like writing all night too. So finally, after I was partway through the story, I realized I was never going to finish it unless I put my novel first in the morning before work, and then whatever I had left over for my clients was all they got. And that's really how it worked out. I just had to get up really early and write early, and then work.
Wow. And I was going to ask you, are you a rower?
Yes.
Yes, that's why Elizabeth is a rower as well. She ended up being a rower.
I had to put something in the book I knew, because I'm not a chemist and I'm not a cook. And I'm not a single mom. There are just so many things, but I put rowing in because I knew it and I didn't have to research it, but also because rowing is the sport of balance. Chemical equations always must be balanced. It's the science of balance, chemistry is. And then in the book, there's a balance between dark and light that I wanted to achieve. So overall, there's a sense of balance. We have an imbalance between the sexes of men and women, and that's why there's always so much conflict.
Yes, I love the analogy you gave us. Well, Elizabeth thought about it, that the sky is full of stars and 50% of the stars are women. So
that's right.
It was really good. You made us think a lot throughout this, like spots of chemistry she gave us, or her inner voice. It was great.
Oh, thank you. Well,
Also,
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
I wanted to add about the rowing that I think that it's also important because it's a sports team. The rowing doesn't work if one of them is missing. And I think that as chemists, she lived in an environment that it's very selfish with their work. They don't want to share it. They don't want to play team. So it's kind of, as you say, like this balance in because she knew how to play a team, but this environment, this chemist environment, didn't let her, and all the feminist thing, and that they didn't want her to succeed. But it's also like I see that as she can be a teammate, right?
You are exactly right about that. You know, in rowing, the strange thing about rowing, besides the fact that I think it's the only sport done backwards, is that if you don't row together as a team, if you don't leave your ego on the dock, and you have to row well, but you have to row with these other people, no matter if you don't like them or whatever, your boat won't go fast if you don't cooperate with each other. And so at the beginning of every race, the goal, of course, is to win. And the only way a boat wins is when everyone decides they have the same goal and they work together and they help each other in the boat during the whole roll, because you can tell if the person in front of you is struggling or the person behind you is struggling, and you can do small things to help them. And I thought, wouldn't it be great if work was that way? That we know, for instance, we'd love to have a cure for cancer, but there's a lot of competition and ego that stands in the ways of these things. And if we just had this goal and we decided, yeah, you know what, the goal is more important than my petty, my petty ego, then we would get a lot further, a lot faster.
And also as women, because that's an analogy when Elizabeth has this nemesis and then they start working together throughout the book. But at first they were opposites, and there were only two women in a world full of men, and they were not getting along. After they saw in each other a lot of coincidence and a lot of things that they are very similar, and they start rowing in a way together and try to understand that when we add more women to our boat and we start rowing together, it will have better results.
That's exactly right. That's exactly what I was hoping people would pick up on. And I think that also saying, specifically about women, because certainly that one character, Miss Frask, she's very sexist herself. And women can be very sexist and they can hurt other women. And it doesn't make sense, because women really need to support each other in the workplace. And so when they actually harm each other, no one moves forward. No one. Yeah.
Exactly. And also with that, we can see that when they gave Elizabeth Sott the pitch of a cooking show, she was not interested to have it. Like, it was really not, she was not really like having this logical, like, why am I going to teach cooking if I'm a chemist? Why? And they told her, because women like to do this. And she was like, I'm a woman and I don't like to do this. Why are you specifying that this is a woman's show? And when she starts doing her show, but starts doing lessons for her in chemistry, she started to know that the audience was really invested on her, and they started to ask questions, and they saw the opportunity to have this other, like, out of the box, for example, show, because it was not in this square they wanted her to be. Exactly.
Exactly. And, you know, I think Elizabeth Zott, you know, she'd gotten pregnant and she didn't want to be a mother. And suddenly she is in this club of women that she had no intention of being part of. And once she's in that club, she realizes that there are a lot of unhappy women in there, that maybe they, you know, didn't wish this for themselves either. And so and yet, you know, it's society. So they're all like, well, this is who we are. So when she goes on TV, I think what she's trying to remind women of is that they're highly capable. And of course they can learn chemistry, you know,
Yes.
and so that's what they do.
What I saw similarities, and yet I don't know if you thought about them, between the Julia Child TV show and the Elizabeth Zott. Were you a little bit thinking
Was
about?
I influenced? This
Yes.
is so embarrassing. So I don't like to cook, so I never watch cooking shows. And I know. And so when I started writing the book, my husband actually said to me, oh, you should watch some cooking shows. And I said, well, I don't want to be influenced. I really just want to create the show how I think it would be. You know, I want it to be kind of different. She's not going to really teach cooking. Anyway, after the book was published, my husband finally said, you've got to watch one episode of Julia Child. I'd never seen her. And I went, oh, this is pretty good.
Because she was really unique as well.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, she was really teaching cooking, but what I really admired about her was she was really plain spoken, and she was, you know, very unusual to have her on television. And I loved that. I thought it was great.
Yes.
Yeah, I love the part when Elizabeth Zott, when she finished cooking and she said, well, kids, set the table. Mom's got to rest a little bit.
Yeah.
Like she's always, I mean, she was obviously ahead of her time, but in every single way.
You know, when I wrote that line about her saying that at the end of every show, I wanted it to be that Elizabeth Zott was so certain that children would watch the show too, because their mom was watching it and their mom's fixated on it, but Elizabeth was so hard not to watch that the kids would watch it. And so she has a message for the next generation at the end of every show, which is respect this woman who's made this dinner. And that way she would develop respect for the next generation for women. And yeah, it's really funny because all these women have said, now I tell my children to set the table every night because I need a moment for myself.
Yes. We told our listeners that we were going to be having a little interview with you, and we asked them if they had any questions. So I'm going to read, and I'm going to ask you some of them. First of all, they're telling you, thank you very much for writing this book of equality, gender equality. And then they asked me, what do you hope readers will take away from your work?
I really hope that readers will really take away the message that change in our society is entirely possible, and that what it takes is some courage. And luckily, courage is what we have inside of us. It's our chemistry. We change all the time, every day in our bodies. Our bodies know how to do it, but we're often so afraid to speak up at work or in other situations, even abusive situations. But if you do speak up, then you realize that there are going to be some people there who are going to support you, but they haven't been brave enough to say it themselves. So the more I think women are able to speak up, the better. And I also think the more that men can become allies to women in the workplace, the better. So they also have to speak up. For instance, if you're sitting in a meeting and you're a man and you hear someone just talk right over a woman, then you have to stop him and say, you know, she wasn't done yet.
Exactly.
And that is how you build respect for women in the workplace.
That's an amazing, amazing thing to say. And we have another question. What advice would you give to aspiring writers, and what advice would you give yourself as a 10-year-old girl?
Oh, okay. For aspiring writers, I would say read as much as you can of other people's books and really figure out how they've crafted their sentences, because it's all in the craft of the sentence of how well you're going to get your point across. So it's not just plot, and it is partly characters, but mostly it's right at that level of sentence construction, that people will resonate with something that sounds right to them, and that is sentence structure. So keep writing and keep rewriting. There's nothing wrong with rewriting. That's where the novel is. And then in terms of what I would tell my 10-year-old self, I would say, you know what? Don't be so afraid. You're going to be okay. I think I was, think I was a pretty scared kid in a lot of ways. And I think a lot of it was unnecessary.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that. And what book do you recommend our listeners? Any book, any type of book?
I just read a book called In Memoriam by Alice Winn, W-I-N-N. It's really, really good. But I will say, I am reading this book right now. Now, it is an ARC, so it's not published yet, but it's called Eve. And it is the most tremendous book about women's bodies that I have never read. She is she's a scientist. The woman who wrote this is Kat Bohannon. It is so fascinating. I think this is going to be a bestseller. I think it's out this summer. And it's just all about how our bodies actually operate. And you just won't believe all the stuff you're going to learn from this. It's just amazing.
All right, we're going to be reading.
Is it a novel or just?
No, it's nonfiction. This one's nonfiction, and In Memoriam is a novel.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now I'm going to ask you some personal questions.
Okay.
Okay. First of all, can you give us, what do you like to drink?
I'm a huge coffee drinker, so I drink a lot of coffee in the morning. That's my favorite beverage.
And no tequila.
Oh, I love tequila. No, of course I do. But now, I'm really careful now, because if I drink too much, then I can't write anything. I mean, I think everything sounds perfect, and it isn't.
And who is your Hollywood crush?
I don't know. I mean, my colleague, I think my biggest crush is still my husband.
Oh, that's so sweet.
And where is your best part of the world?
Oh, that is hard.
I can see you have lived in a lot of places, right? You're a traveler. So
it is. It's really hard. I grew up partly in Colombia, in Bogota, and I love South America. And then
Do you speak Spanish?
I did. I used to be fluent in Spanish and Portuguese, and then we moved to Switzerland, and I learned German and Swiss German, and then all of these languages have combined into something. It's so awful. So no, I really love Switzerland because of the mountains, but you know what I really love is Hawaii.
Yes, it's lovely.
Where are you originally from?
From California.
Oh, okay. And
just last but not least, can you tell us who is your major cheerleader?
Oh, well, that's my husband. My husband and my kids are my major cheerleaders.
Ay, how nice.
I know. I got a good one. Yeah.
I mean, it's not hard to be your cheerleader. You're a great writer, and we're very, very, very honored that you took the time to take this interview. Thank you very much, Bonnie.
Thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you,
Thank you very
Bonnie.
much.
Bye.
Bye.
Gracias por escuchar este episodio de En la misma página. Si te gustó, no olvides ponerle like, compartir con tus amigos y seguirnos en nuestras redes.